Hey guys, Henning and Morten from FlippedNormals here, and like everyone else on the internet, we are going to talk about Sonic today. Before we get into the video, just remember to subscribe and hit the little bell notification so you always get notified whenever we put out a new video. So, new Sonic trailer has dropped, and yeah, I mean, I guess you said we waited 6 months for this? It's been 6 months already?
Yeah, around 6 months since we came up with a solution on how to fix it last time.
Yeah, a lot has changed, and we want to get into from our perspective, not just comparing the Abomination to what they've managed to actually do good, but also just from a production point of view, in terms of artists suffering and stuff.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked our channels before, and both Morten and I, we used to work in VFX. I personally worked for the company which made this at NPC, so I have a lot of friends who's been suffering now for the last few months, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean we've worked on, you know, Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean, Pacific Rim,
Ghostbusters.
So
let's not forget Ghostbusters.
Gods of Egypt. Anyone? So you know, we've been through a fair few productions, and obviously our thoughts go out to the artists that had to change all of this. But in the end, I think it's clear to everyone that the result is definitely better. So we could start by looking at what has actually changed just from a character point of view. The sort of first Devil Spawn that they made was it's like when we look at it now, it feels even worse than when we looked at it the first time. We were just talking about this. I think it's that now you have something nice to compare it to, so now it just doesn't look as good. But a lot of things has changed. They've made it more in line with the sort of original Sonic design. Obviously they've taken some liberties, but then also gone away from this human in a suit kind of design that they had before.
With a tiny mustache we can see under his nose there, right there. Now you can't unsee it, and I'm not sorry.
But there's a lot of things that we pointed out in our first video as well. It's the human teeth, like really creepy teeth on a semi-stylized character. The sort of tiny but beady eyes with very, very thin lids. More realistic dog-like nose.
No eyebrows.
No eyebrows. The fact that he has fur on his hands, and this white patch of fur combined with the human-looking skin tone of fur. So a lot of these things just all combine into this creation. Whereas when we look at the new one, I mean, it's a lot of things has changed, and it's not just as simple as it's just a quick change in texturing or something. You know, there's the overall shading for the fur looks better. The groom is a lot better and has changed. This can also just be because they've had more time. It's more saturated, and that's a general thing for the whole trailer. I feel like it's more energetic and just has a lot more color in it.
Yeah, this just looks a lot more like the original character. This is, if you were to do this for film, the way I would start out is, let's look at the original character and let's look at how we can adapt it for film. What I'm sure has happened here is that they were trying to do that. A lot of the concept artists have basically presented the one to the right as, this is what we should do, and then a lot of executives have gone into it and just started modifying it little by little, like make the eyes a bit smaller, make them a bit less green, a bit more electric. I'm sure concept artists had a note making more electric.
Yeah,
he's
definitely.
Like, what does that mean? And just generally over time this happens. Now this is pure speculation, but from having been in a few productions, Ghostbusters, this kind of stuff happens a lot, where I'm sure a lot of concept artists are literally just put out the first piece of concept art they had and just like, ta-da, I solved it a year ago for you.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm pretty with you on that one. That's what happened. And like you definitely see it in this one, where like this is I guess the most infamous picture of Suit Sonic, where I mean it's literally a child in a suit. It's
with a weird head.
Yeah, I mean, and you can see that they've tried to resolve it in a realistic way. Like, how would it be? You know, I feel like that's the challenge. That was the mindset that they approached it with. How can we take Sonic and put him into a realistic environment? Whereas what they've done the second time after the fan outcry is, how can we take a stylized Sonic and put the stylized Sonic into the real world? It's, you know, the tapering on the legs. Now he's no longer wearing like a tracksuit. Now he's actually like this inverse tapered leg, which is completely unrealistic, but just looks a million times better. The fact that he's wearing gloves, I mean, his proportions have changed a lot. Look at the lengths of the legs, the size of the body, but also the size of the face on his head. The ears have changed. They've become bigger as well. Like we said before, just the overall saturation, the color of it. Like, he almost has a kind of metallic shine in his fur, which gives him that speed and electric feel, or whatever. I don't know what their approach was.
They actually use design principles on the new one to the left, or the one to the right. Like, you have different contrasts. You have very thin arms, you have huge hands, you have thin legs and huge feet, and you're just using contrasting things here. If you want something to read as cute, you make the eyes ginormous and you don't give him teeth. If you want to make something scary, you make the eyes tiny and you give him teeth. That's one of the big differences they've done. They're just looking into what should this character feel like, and if you want speedy, funny, quick, you do the one to the right. If you want it creepy and weird, you do the stuff to the left.
And, you know, in terms of the artist, I'm sure when, you know, the trailer came out, everyone's always kind of relieved when you do a trailer delivery, because you're just busting your ass off trying to get stuff ready for a trailer delivery. They see the blowback for it, and everyone in the office just, I'm sure they just went, oh no.
What have we done now?
So what I'd be curious to figure out is just like, how has this impacted the actual artists? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to have to do all the changes, but I really don't hope that they were the ones who sort of like had to do overtime in order to get this stuff finished. I'm kind of inclined to think that they have done a lot of overtime to get it to this point where they are now, just because it's not as simple as just, like Henning said, just soft selecting something here and there and you're good. Like, yeah, you could probably reuse the topology for the body and maybe the back of the head, but facial topology, okay, maybe you could reuse the facial topology, but you would have to change it drastically in order to get these proportions from those proportions. Making the gloves, new shoes, ankle socks, I suppose. But
a new inside of the mouth, redo the eyes, redo the textures for the entire thing, redo the groom. This is not a trivial task.
No, I mean, you probably just relax the UVs and you're good with the UVs, but that takes 5 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
One of the bigger ones is definitely in facial performance, rigging, and animation. Those three things will, I mean, maybe you could, they probably had some sort of auto-rig scripted for this that like populates it pretty quickly, but you still have to fix all the deformation again, because at that point, even though the topology is the same, or maybe it's mostly the same, a lot of deformation will have changed.
And the acting is going to be different. Like, you are going to have to reanimate the entire thing. Like, even if you could do some kind of performance capture thing, or like you could transfer the animation somehow, you probably wouldn't want to. When it comes to this, it's most likely quicker to redo it than it is to stick to the old ones anyway.
Yeah, and that's been one of the big changes that I noticed in the trailer from the first to the second one. I think this picture sort of captures it pretty well. This one is realistic and electric.
Oh, yes.
More serious, right? This had, like, the first trailer had, what was it, Gangster's Paradise as the theme song for it.
Yeah, perfect for Sonic.
It just kind of completely threw me off. Oh, the lips as well. But this one, it was a lot more upbeat, a lot more colorful. It wasn't as serious. It's more like that, semi-serious comedy that we're gonna, I mean, let's be real, the film is still gonna suck. It's gonna be 4 or 5 out of 10 on Rotten Tomato, but it looks a lot better now. So at least you can get past it just based on the visuals. But these two, like, comparisons, like it's this doesn't even feel like Sonic when you compare it to something that actually is pretty on model.
How do you make something feel scary? You give him an angular face. How do you make something feel nice and friendly? You give him a nice and round face. How do you make him feel scary? A desaturated face. How do you make it feel nice? Saturated face. These things they're just core design principles. One thing which is interesting here, which brings us to a new topic, is if you look at the eyes, you have the kind of like the white bridge between the eyes, which you need to have it here in order to adapt it. And then why do you need to adapt the character? Why can't you just take the Sonic model from the games, which is fully 3D, and just put Groom on it? Well, when you're doing these kind of movies, the facial performance and general performance required is of a whole different level than you're doing in games. In games, you have like a very low poly character, which is in motion blurred all the time anyway, and you're looking from far away. Here, you're having these shots here, which are this close up, and he's actually performing. You need to figure out, what do you do with the mouth, the eyes, the eyebrows, eyelids, whatever it might be. All these kind of things, they have to be designed, because otherwise it's not going to be able to move at all. You aren't just taking a maquette and trying to make it move. You need to design it with motion in mind, particularly someone like Sonic, who is so animated. You're not doing a rock statue character. You're maybe doing the most animated character you've seen from a live action movie like this in a long time.
And this comparison here, just wanted to yeah, I don't know. It just looks like I can't say that in a video, but yeah, it's just, I don't even know what to say at this point. Like, so many things have changed, and one of the things we mentioned before was like just in terms of the performance. So performance definitely has to be updated, and you really don't want to work from something that's already existing. Like, the amount of times that we've gotten in a model with topology, or they've told us use this existing topology, it's going to be way faster than making new topology. It's like, that's never the case. Most of the time it's a lot easier and a lot cleaner just to do it from scratch. So I'd be surprised if they could recover any sort of performance animation for this, especially for the face. Because he's much more animated, and he's a lot more upbeat this time around compared to this. Like, yeah, he was cheeky in the first trailer, but like, there's a lot more like bodily animation. Like, he moves around a lot more. He does a lot more subtle stuff with his hands, his fingers, and his expressions. So a lot of things have had to be updated in order to get to this point.
And we're not talking about that you can't salvage the animation. If you absolutely wanted to, you could transfer the animation somehow, but it's more that you don't want to. When you're doing something like this, you're striving for excellence. You're not striving for, oh, this is maybe going to work, let's just kind of try to fix it.
I think it's interesting when you look at these two shots here. Like, look how narrow his head actually has become and how big the eyes are. Like, I think before, they tried to squeeze in that human skull into this and make the eyes, okay, they're slightly bigger than human eyes, but they could still function. Like, there's still a round eyeball. Like, there's no way there's a round eyeball in this face. No. That's just a plane with an eye on top of it. But he's a lot more wide here, and that sort of ratio between his wide head and just that long, creepy suit body, I think that's all of those things combined. Basically, they did everything wrong, which they fixed now, which is really cool to see.
I'm also curious if they had to do reshoots for this, because I wouldn't be surprised, because the proportions are so different. So there might be times where it literally doesn't fit inside the frame, or maybe he's too tiny now, so you have to crop the frame or whatever it might be.
Yeah, there was a shot from, like, a lot of these obviously are, like, we haven't seen these shots in the first trailer, so it's hard to compare, right? But there was like a shot from a bar where he's standing on top of the bar, and he's just like talking to his actor friend. I don't know what his name is. And like, in terms of proportions and size, he's a lot smaller than the other Sonic before. Like, that seems like a new scene that they hadn't shot before. And just because he is taller, or he is shorter now, you can't frame them in the same way. But I think this comparison here is like, we've gone for, I don't know, the worst over here, and then
so bad,
and the best we could find. But I feel like these comparisons kind of illustrate it pretty well. Like, just especially the first one here, which is from the start of the trailer, where you see him in Green Hill, just running around. It's super saturated, obviously not part of our world. And then just this, I don't know, forgotten monkey in a den somewhere. It's just
he looks like a pickpocket gang from a Charles Dickens novel, and he had to do a lot of like chimney sweeping.
So it is really, like, I guess it's hard to conclude this, and we really want to just do a video about like what the update and what has gone into this. I think just from comparing the two, I also noticed that the grade has also been updated, which is something you see pretty often in trailers. The closer they get to release, the more time compositing has had to tweak the grade and tweak the masks and the effects as well to just make it feel a lot nicer. So like, not all comparisons between the first and the second trailer are just because they updated the Sonic design. It's also because they've had more time to just make the movie look nicer in general.
What I just really want to stress, basically as my final point, is just how non-trivial this change here is. I've seen it now online, and people I've been talking to was saying that this is a soft selection job where you can get this around by just moving around and soft selecting. And yes, this is true if you are dealing with a single personal project where you're just making Sony in Blender or Maya. You could salvage a lot of this with soft selection, but even then you still couldn't do it. There are so many things which are completely new to it. So the first stage here is that you gotta first rework the concept. You can't just say, oh, just make it better. You gotta now do a proper concept sculpt for it. You gotta make sure all the proportions are working. Ideally, you want to do some rig testing on the concept sculpt, where you just do some quick zero meshing on it and just really testing it out. The worst thing you can do is that you end up in animation and now you realize, oh shit, his hands are too short. So you really want to make sure that the concept is working. Once you're there, now you like Morten was talking before, you probably gotta see if you can repurpose the topology. You can do this by using a tool like Wrap, or you could just soft select it into place and then do some projection on it. You definitely will have to rework areas, particularly like the face, which is just drastically different. Textures, you might be able to salvage something there, but it might be quicker just to repaint it.
Yeah, I mean, the textures for Sonic, not too advanced. Obviously,
No.
There's some dirt and stuff on top, but realistically, it's probably faster to just redo them.
Yeah, I would have probably just redone it. When I'm doing these kind of things, I prefer to just throw it out and redo it from scratch, because otherwise you're dealing with so much legacy. Rigging is just, you gotta redo a lot of things. When proportions changes, that's a real nightmare to deal with. And like Morten was saying, facial performance or face shapes, they gotta be redone. Then animation, it's gotta be redone in all the shots. A lot of the lighting is most likely gonna have to be redone as well, because it's so specific to where it is. If you're doing a student film or personal project, you can probably just, maybe you can reuse the lighting or whatever. But in this case, you're going for excellence. You're going for really making the character shine. Like you see the middle shot here to the left. The lighting here is incredibly well done, and it's very specific to this character. If this character is suddenly like a head taller or a head shorter, you're gonna have to move the lighting around, and this takes so much more time than you think in a production. Everything takes more time in a production than you are aware, because for every single change here, you're talking about different departments which have to talk together, and they're distributed across the globe as well. Hell, oftentimes they're over different companies. So just doing a change like, oh, just make the legs longer or shorter, you can't do that. I worked on a movie where we found I was starting texturing and the concept wasn't great. The legs were too short, and I was asking, can we just make the legs longer? And they're like, no, we can't. My opinion doesn't even matter. Like, if they should be longer or shorter, it's completely irrelevant, because they spent 6 months on that character just designing it, and it's gone through so many executives and producers and all that kind of stuff across the globe. So being able to do a change like this is like, it's an insane thing to do, and I've never seen this been done before. I've seen them changing some shapes here and there, like on Attila the Battle Angel, there were some small shape changes or something like that, but not a redesign. This is insanity. So please don't make this a habit. please don't look at this and be like, oh yeah, cool, Sonic did it, so we can just throw a lot of misery at NPC and be happy about it.
Yeah, one thing is to look at the final result and go like, okay, it looks pretty cool now, but we also have to consider the people behind it. And most likely the soups and, well, maybe the soups are going to take some shit for it. But like the execs that sit up in their boardroom and they go like, oh, okay, make the eyes more creepy and give him a suit so he looks like a... I can't say that either. Yeah, just, they don't really get a lot of shit for it. Maybe some of them will. They get a slap on the wrist and go like, oh no. But when you have a film like this, I would guess the budget for a film like some of the films that we've worked on had budgets of 200, 250, almost up to $300 million, and those quite high budget films. Yeah, Jim Carrey is in this one, but that's about it in terms of high profile actors, and he's been kind of off of the film list for many years. So I don't know, maybe like 150 million for budget for a film like this. It's not insignificant to add another 6 months of development time to it. So the cost of doing this is very non-trivial, and you have to recoup that afterwards again, because now you've extended the production by another 6 months. So it's really not something that you should do or ever really have to do in a production.
I saw that today. There is now a midweek Steam sale on all the Sonic games, 85% off.
That's very clever.
Somebody is really trying to monetize this, which is fair.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah, but I guess that just about wraps it up for this video. So if you want to see more content like this in the future, I never want to look at this Sonic again, but other kinds of content like this in the future, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe down below. And I guess we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, guys.
If you're looking for training or high quality assets, make sure to stop by the FlippedNormals marketplace. And if you're interested in supporting us by buying our merchandise, you can check that out in the description below.